Hello, this is Qyalms, once again visiting from the Grim Wayside. Today we have a shorter video. We're opening just one box. This is the Autumn Limited Edition of the Antu and Penny's Box collaboration, the 9-color deer set. So unlike the others in the 9-color deer set, this one is not a blind box. You know exactly what you're getting. So let's go ahead and open him up and see what kind of clothing he has. I think that's the major difference between this particular sculpt and one of the other sculpts that's in the deer set. So let's get right to opening. It still has that tear open top that the blind boxes have, which is kind of unfortunate. I would have liked to have had a top that I could close nicely. The packaging is much nicer than, say, the angel from the 10,000 escape plans. She came in just like a blister pack sort of packaging, but this is actually very pretty. The image on the front that was covering the figure is a sheet of sort of thickened cardboard, and it's actually a really pretty illustration. I haven't seen any brands do that where they actually include something that you could use as like a mini poster, perhaps. It's nice that they use that as a separate piece. That's pretty cool. The box itself has QR codes on the side. There's some information on the back. This one in particular is named and apologies for not being able to pronounce it correctly, but Dan King, perhaps, is how it is written. It has some other information about the 9-color deer set. It has the authenticity sticker with the hologram on the back. It has some Chinese text on the side. I haven't translated that yet. So we'll go ahead and put the packaging to the side. We'll bring out the actual figure. So the figure itself is actually the same sculpt as another one of the blind box deers. Move those out of the way. A little tricky. There we go. Okay, so this particular sculpt is the same as the one from the original set known as Moonspring, where she has a pink and blue color scheme. This one has a pretty green. It's less of it's a ombre, but less of a painted ombre than it looks like it might actually be part of the plastic. They do both have these very long, like little pigtails in the back. And I will say, Moonspring is of the 6 that I have, Moonspring is the one that sits on my desk and I look at her the most. But she's a little bit more of a display doll than a play doll, mostly because these little pigtails that they have make it difficult to move her head around. She has sort of a limited range of play with her hair. Her hair is also a little loose and tends to come off. I need to jam something in there to make that a little tighter. But they are the same hair sculpts, they are the same face sculpt, and all of the deer have the same body sculpt. And I will say this about the deer set in general, that I've discovered that, again, more of a display than play, the back legs have a tendency to collapse on themselves in this set. And so I think if you wanted to have a little bit more posability or you wanted to have a little more playability, I had not seen this before, but once again, the visiting angel from the 10,000 escape plans, when I was playing around with her, I realized that they had put in wires in her joints. At first, that struck me as very strange, but it's sort of a very soft wire, the kind that like you can get for some jewelry wrapping. And it's in her knees, and it actually helps with her posability when her stringing isn't so tight. So you don't have to fight her strings so much. And her legs will have a little more security when you try and have her stand. She sits on my shelf, so that's not really an issue for me. But I am thinking that I probably will go back and get some of that jewelry wire and put it through their back legs so that when you're moving them around or posing them, the back legs aren't always collapsing on themselves and falling down. So that was something that I noticed in particular about the Antu's set of dolls. So the main difference between these two sets of dolls, they might have a slight facial color difference. She might be a little paler than this one. Maybe. A little hard to tell. Maybe not. They do have their own individual face painting. This one with the green hair has very distinct and striking markings on her face. Very pretty. All of the Antu deer have distinctive face painting for each style. It's very pretty. So she has the half closed eyes that this other sculpt has. So let's go ahead and open up the clothing for this doll. So like with all the Antu's Penny Spots collaborations, they do include a sheet that explains the stringing to you. With some other information. So a map of just how the dolls are strung in case you want to restring them. It gives you a list of all the parts of the doll, how to change the heads, and how to put on the clothing. Okay, so when the Antu's dolls came out, the little deer, they came out with just the hands that they have in the box, which are graceful but sort of plain, just like these sort of semi-open hands. Later on, Kikagoods had a special points buying prize system where you could get these little round hands where they're making, they have one set that's closed fists and one set that's sort of the OK symbol. It's a Buddhist hand gesture, which makes sense for the fact that they're the 9-color deer. So those items, those hands that came in the accessory set that you could use your points to buy, it looks like they've just went ahead and included those in the autumn limited edition set. So that's a really nice thing. One of the things that they pointed out on the website, of course, is that this doll comes with this really cool acrylic charm. It has a long silk tassel on it that's nicely kept inside this little plastic sleeve. It has a beautiful illustration of the doll. It looks like it has a plastic protective film on both sides that I'll have to remove to make it super shiny. But it's a pretty sort of anime cartoon version of the doll itself. I'm not sure how exactly this top string, I have to look at the pictures on the website to see exactly how this top string attaches to it, if it's just a knot that I need to make. But they did add, in addition to the string, there's like a small charm embellishment, a little bead embellishment on the top with some knots. That's really cool. It's a very pretty and nice extra to that set. And then to the clothes themselves. Now, this doll has a price of $54.90 on the Kikagoods website, and the regular set has a cost of $31.90. So, really, the question we're trying to answer is it worth $23 to purchase this set over just purchasing one of the blind boxes? And I think a lot of that value is going to be in the clothing. It's the main difference. The other difference, of course, being this is not a blind box, so you do know exactly which doll you're getting. If you're not particular, then a blind box might be more of a value to you. But if you want to know what kind of doll you're getting, if you want to know that you're getting the one with the pigtails, maybe that's part of the value of those $23. So we have this piece is the veil. It goes over her ears. There is an overdress sort of thing. This is the hat, which is certainly more complicated and substantial than I had originally thought from the website. And then these are her underclothes. So the clothing set itself is just 4 pieces. Yeah. So the dress is all one piece. The other sets of dolls came with a lot of jewelry. It came with a bracelet for the wrist and a bracelet for the ankle and an armband and a necklace. That's something this one doesn't have. And they each had two pieces of clothing. They had the top and the bottom, and then they additionally had this little sort of wired floating ribbon that went with them. And so this one has four pieces to the costume. So the veil, this fabric is a really tricky fabric to use. Um, the sheerness of it, the delicacy of the fabric is definitely a challenge. And you can see a lot of puckering in the veil. That's kind of to be expected. Seeing if I tug on it a little bit, if maybe it straightens it out a little bit. Maybe I can hit it with a steamer and that will make it a little flatter. They the edges do seem to be self-sealed and they did turn them up, so it's not just a raw edge, it is a hemmed edge. And the edge doesn't seem to fray at all. That's good. The pieces on the sides are elastic. Those are to go over the ears, I imagine. So let's go ahead and put on the veil. And these are just your very common sort of any kind of elastic that you'd buy at like a craft store. Nothing exotic there. I wonder if it's supposed to go over the hair too, or maybe I should put it under the hair. You get a good look at the face painting right now. So with the dark green to lighter green, sort of teal colored um, gradients, you can see each one of these sort of teardrop shapes has that gradient on it. The eyelashes are beautifully done, some very fine, tiny lines. The pupil of the eye, let me just check her. Yeah, so the pupil of this one has two circles, but the Autumn limited edition doll appears to have little diamonds or like little starry diamonds in her eyes. So that's a difference, that's a change. And this green color is unique to this Autumn edition. There's no other uh, in the 6 that came out earlier, there are not any others in this particular sort of dark green shade. There's a couple that are sort of lighter blues and bluesy greens, but none in this sort of darker color. Okay, so maybe that's the better way to do it. I think so. Reassemble that. Yeah, that works for me. So that's the veil. Go ahead and put on the main outfit that goes under the other two pieces. So looking at the fit and finish of this garment, these are silk cords on this part of the neck, and it's pretty well attached. There's another one on the other side to tie behind the neck. The actual piece that goes around the throat is it appears to be self-edged and it's folded over the top. It's sort of a shiny material, um, but it doesn't feel cheap. It feels nice. It's a nice weight of material and it's a nice texture. The There's some beautiful screen printing on the three pieces of the skirt. There's this flower motif that's on the top. Again, it's made out of the same silky material. It's definitely thicker than any of the other material that's been used in this particular set. It has another sort of diamond drop here, but the bottom of these three pieces has a really beautiful landscape image to it. You can just see like these little clouds that look kind of like flowers, and then there's darker mountains that sort of mist off and disappear into the background in various colors. So after we looked at the beautiful ombre on the front here, we'll move on to talking about these other panels that make up the skirt. So there are these two sort of fish fin shaped chiffon panels. They have a gentle sort of ombre or highlight effect. They are a dark gray that moves towards a much lighter gray and then moves back to a darker gray. Talking about the front just a little bit more, at the neckline, you see that there's two metal embellishments. They go over sort of a printed pseudo slit, but they are separate metal pieces that are sewn on. At the waist, they have this pre-tied cord, and I do appreciate it when they pre-tie these little cords so they don't have to fiddle around with them too much and worry about them always coming apart. It has a sort of decorative knot on either side of this. It looks sort of like an infinity symbol, but it also sort of looks like it would be made out of like coins. And then at the ends of the waist embellishment, there are these two little gold beads that sit on top of some little knots. The ends they don't appear to be sealed in any way, but they are at the moment not fraying in any way either. Going back to the inside, which we visited briefly, the finish of the collar is very nice. It's very clean. The line where the petticoat is, excuse me, and the top, which are sewn very beautifully on the front side. I should have mentioned these are all beautifully hemmed on the inside, these heavier panels. The fabric itself does not fray, and the heaviness of it lends to like really crisp edges. The finish of these panels is really nice. The only place I'd say where the finish is not exceptional for a doll outfit is the line where the chiffon is sewn to the top and bottom. But, it's on the inside. That's not really that important. It's definitely not going to show. So it's not really a matter of quality that I would be deterred by at all. We do have two pieces of the sort of soft doll elastic that you see on a lot of doll clothes. On the one side, it's the soft Velcro in white. On the other side, they actually made the Velcro in two parts. So there is a white piece on the top part on the opposite side of the very opaque top. And then they have this darker piece that's on the chiffon with the ombre effect, the sort of fishtail skirt pieces. So they did think it was important enough, and it is a nice detail, that they matched the color of the Velcro to the color of the piece of fabric that it was sewn to. That's a really nice detail and a showing of just like how good of quality this is. And just speaking one last comment on the hems, since it's beautifully hemmed on the inside of the panels, the chiffon is not itself hemmed, but it does not appear to be fraying in any sort of way. If I pull on it, I'm not going to get manhandling with it, but when you pull on it, it definitely doesn't seem to fray. It may be sealed or slightly singed in some way to keep it from fraying. But I don't have any qualms about how the edges are finished on this chiffon piece. So, revisiting the doll, since I know I'm going to have to tie this behind the neck, I'm going to go ahead and remove her hair. These pigtails, again, they can make a doll kind of hard to dress and kind of hard to maneuver around. You have sort of limited range of motion in how to pose the head. It is beautifully styled, this really gorgeous swoop with the ombres and the clear plastic, the translucence of it is really beautiful. It just makes it, if this is a doll you want a lot of posability for, and you want to play with the doll a lot, you're going to have a difficult time finding the right, you're not going to have the full range of motion with the head that you might expect from a doll that has either soft, like fiber hair, or a much shorter hairstyle. So we'll go ahead and lift her arms and put together the Velcro. So the Velcro fits really nicely around her body. And again, because they use those two different colors of Velcro, they probably could have used a dark color of Velcro on the top since the top is opaque. But I guess they didn't want it to show on this little edge right here. So kudos to them for that attention to detail. The skirt the fishtail parts, they're less of a petticoat from the front than they are a complete separate skirt in the back. And unlike any of the other costumes from that series, this one does let you display their adorable little clear tails. So this doll has a tail in the same color of green as her horns, the same color as her hooves. Put her arms down, tie her neck thing, and I put on new nails, which are just a smidgen long, which can make this sort of a tedious process. So bear with me as I try and get a little tiny bow out of this. I would think the almond-shaped nails would make this easier, but it just doesn't. Struggle. Okay. And you really do want these pieces at the neckline to be sewn in well, since you're going to be pulling a pretty tight knot. Okay, there we go. Now to reassemble the hair. Okay. So I'm probably not going to display the doll with the veil. The veil, although a nice accessory, does cover up how pretty the pattern is on the top and the little details on the top. Now that it's on, the little waist decoration hangs just a little bit lower than the waistband, and it does hang just precisely between the motif that's on the top with the flower and then the little sort of star and wing motif that's on the skirt. The size is really nice. Some of the deer costumes were a little long on the regular set, but this one falls right at her ankles, so that's really pretty. So over the top of this garment, they have provided this very sheer, very delicate looking, sort of like a kimono. I'm not sure what they're called in Chinese clothing, but they have the long sleeves like you would expect a kimono with furisode sleeves and sort of the kimono neckline. But I'm sure there's a name for it in Chinese, and I apologize for not knowing what that is. The trim on the neckline has a really pretty ombre effect. It's much darker at the bottom than it is at the neck, and then comes back down to a darker color. That's a really cool detail that they added. The body of the garment is white, but it fades to this intricate sort of, it looks like waves pattern in a very pale sort of minty green. And that's true too on the front. It goes down to a darker sort of wave pattern that you can just see on the front. The stitching is good on the outside. Again, it's tricky to hem and stitch this fabric anyway, but especially on a sheer, trying to get these tiny stitches not to pucker and to make it neat so that since you can see through the actual fabric, it's a real trick. And I think they succeeded for the most part on it. Again, there's some places where right around this back, it looks like it's very puckered. I might try and hit it with the steamer. I won't try and hit it with an actual iron. I'm afraid that the iron would probably melt the fabric, but steaming may be able to loosen and flatten those stitches a little bit. The back is the same design as the front, and it has a slit that probably goes all the way up to her back, her mid-back. Where I assume it's going to fall to either side of her centaur body. These seams are a little obvious. I can tell that they were tricky for them to manufacture, these underarm seams. But I would say for the most part, the hemming is good, and they've done a pretty clean job of it. Like I said, this is a really tricky garment for them to have made for a doll of this size. So I commend them for trying and mostly succeeding on that. I hope I don't have to take her hair off again. So put this on. Okay. That wasn't so bad. So looking at the way it fits on the back. Okay, yeah, there we go. So the seam goes to about her mid-back. It covers the Velcro almost entirely, and then it splits and falls to either side. And I mean, I guess these side slits might be important in the way the garment lays. Because of this there's sort of some bunching here that looks a little awkward. Again, I'm going to try and hit it with a steamer and see if maybe I can figure this out, make it lay a little flat. But if you're looking at it from the front, it's not such a big issue. The sleeves look very pretty on, especially go ahead and pose them towards the back. They are longer than her arms are. They cover her hands. And it looks like the pieces in the front, they're actually longer or taller than the doll is herself. So they sort of pool on the ground when she's wearing this outer garment. Let's see. Oh, and the last piece that we have is this rather elaborate veiled hat. So the hat itself looks kind of like any sun visor you'd see an old lady wearing out in her garden for gardening. Got to protect your skin. It has a fuzzy band that goes against the hair, and then it's a very thick, very stiff piece of, I guess I would call it canvas. It's stitched pretty well. The stitching's a little goofy, and I would imagine that's because the canvas is a little thick and hard to sew. But it does have a lot of structure. It's very rigid. It has 2 ribbons tied to it. The ribbons fraying just a smidge at the end. I probably would burn that, or I would glue that very last edge. It's not terribly important. On the front, on the inside seam, that's where these larger veil pieces have been sewn. And I'll just make the same comment very quickly. It's very difficult with this clear, soft, very fine fabric to make these hems. And I think they succeeded probably the best here on the hat in doing that, better than the veil and better than probably some of the seams on the back of the kimono type garment. They look pretty good here. So again, might hit them with some seams, see if I can get them to lay flat. And then the final embellishment on the hat is, it looks like they ran 2 rows of stitches to attach these metallic strings, and they are metal. And they are numerous. So they have because of the weight of the metal, they have a very nice like sway and a very nice fall to them. They are, like I said, stitched on with 2 lines of stitching along the bottom. So let's go ahead and see if we can figure out how this hat works best. I'm looking at the illustration right here to see if I'm supposed to put it above or below the horns, but the illustration itself doesn't actually include the hat. So, but I think above the unicorn horn, but below the deer horns. That makes sense to me. This sort of loop of hair that's on the side makes that fit a little wonky. But since the hat is so stiff itself, it sort of just skims on top of the head anyway. Another tiny bow. Thoughts and prayers. I sometimes use tweezers when I'm dressing my dolls for this reason. I should have probably brought a pair out from the bathroom. And I think that's good enough. So it's tied really loosely on the head. It does, because of this one loop of hair over here, it doesn't fit like perfectly symmetrical. Let's flip her over. The veil definitely completely covers her. If you want a very mysterious looking presentation for your doll, this is definitely the one for you. This camera angle, it's a little hard to show how the little beads hang down, but I think you can use the imagination. Again, since they did a nice job stitching it, and this is the outermost garment, I think that's really pretty. So when I display her, I probably won't have the hat on her. I probably won't have the face veil on her, and I'll give it some thinks as to whether or not I want this outer kimono garment on there. Because to be perfectly honest, the dress that's underneath everything is so pretty by itself. So going back to my question, is it worth $23 to purchase this doll instead of or in addition to one of the regular 9-color deer box sets that are only, $31 versus $54? And I would say that considering 1/12 size doll clothing at Kikagoods in specific usually runs in the $15 range, and you can get a pretty nice outfit out of it. For example, this one with the hat, it came with socks that don't fit her feet, the dress, and I think it might have had another couple pieces. That was one of those outfits that's, around $15. I don't remember exactly how much I paid for it, but it's around $15. I would say that the outfit's definitely worth at least $15. I would say $20 is absolutely reasonable for the number of pieces that you get and for the quality that you get. And there is some value, I think, in being able to know which doll you want. A lot of different series, maybe you don't like every doll that's in it, and maybe you hate some of them. I would say that's true for this 10,000 Island series. I purchased the Angel because I knew that I was getting the Angel. There are several others in this blind box set that I really didn't want. And so I was glad that they came out with this option. So if you want to know what doll you're getting, and I believe the clothing is a good value, you're also getting the extra hands, and you're getting the acrylic charm, and even if you want to count it as an extra, this little sort of poster print of the doll. I think it's a really good value. So kind of have to weigh your own values on that, but I think that the price of $54 is pretty reasonable when you consider the price of the regular series of the dolls. So I keep saying she will go to my display shelf, probably. She's going to continue to live on my desk because she fell in love with this mermaid and they have to live together down there. It's non-negotiable at this point, unfortunately. So they are together on my desk, but this little girl is going to go to my display shelf, and I'm going to be really happy about that. I think that it was a good purchase. So that is my review for the Autumn Limited Color Antu's 9-color deer. Thank you for listening. I know it gets kind of wordy and kind of long. If you have any requests for any videos you'd like to see in the future, please let me know. I still have Kikagoods had that problem with production for the Minty Flamingo set. So she is sort of in production limbo right now, but I do expect to be getting her. And then we have some other videos that are in the pipeline. But if you have other videos you want to see me do, let me know, and be sure to subscribe if you feel generous, and please leave comments. We'll try and get back to those as soon as we see them. So thank you again. This is Qyalms signing off from the Grim Wayside. Thank you for watching.